Cutting, the father of hadoop, on in disruptive tech ASEAN. And my first question to you, sir, is your talk today is understanding big data evolution, right? So how do you feel big data is evolving, and why is it important for people to understand it?
It's not so much, I think, that the big data is evolving, it's that all of our society is evolving to adopt technology, and these technologies produce data, and we have now inexpensive hardware that we can afford to store and process this data, and so the need for big data technologies is greater and greater. And we're just seeing that it's the effective tool to optimize and improve governments, businesses, just about everything, healthcare, you name it. We're seeing just this widespread adoption of data technologies.
So speaking of adoption of data technologies, are there any new technologies that we should be looking at that are game changers in the analytics space that like Hadoop was when it first came about?
Yeah, and I think Hadoop established a style of using an open source toolkit, having a more self-service model where people are direct rather than working through intermediaries, being able to store the original data sets rather than always having to transform them to conform to a schema. So there's a certain style that came out of Hadoop. And now we see a lot of other systems that are being built in that style. And some of the most popular ones we see these days are things like Spark, which is a big improvement in most areas on MapReduce, more powerful API, easier to use, and more powerful both. We've got streaming systems like Kafka. We've got alternate storage engines to Hadoop's HDFS. We've got a system like Kudu. So yes, we're definitely seeing a lot of active development of new technologies in this style that Hadoop initiated.
So what excites you when it comes to this about this data-driven future?
It excites me that we can really see improvements in our economy, in our health, in our education. That I think it can help to lift all of society, and we've seen dramatic improvements in the 20th century in lifespans and health and wealth of people around the world, and I think these data technologies are one of the driving forces behind the similar improvements we're going to continue to see now in this century. So it's wonderful to be a part of that, of the real progress of the century. So.
All right. And my last question to you is, it's great for you to be here in Sunway University today. What do you feel the impact is for the students when they get to hear you speak today?
I'm hoping I can help to inspire them to pursue careers in this area. I think it's a smart place for them to invest their time. I believe that, as I just said, that these kinds of technologies are really going to drive progress for decades, and so it's a great career area to get started in. It's the careers, the things that you would be best to study 20, 30, 50 years ago are different than they are now.
Right.
And this is very much, I think, something that gives you a path in your life that can be interesting, can be productive, can help folks make a difference in their lives, make a difference in the world. So I'm hoping to impart some of that excitement.
All right. Thank you for your time, Mr. Cutting. And
thank you.
That's all we have for today. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back. I'm here with Dr. Elizabeth Lee, the Senior Executive Director of the Sunway Education Group. Thanks for joining us, Dr. Elizabeth.
My pleasure.
All right. So with Doug Cutting here in the university today, how does Sunway University feel that the students will benefit from talks like this actually?
We actually have many, many talks for our students. The idea is to expose them to industry, what is out there, what will they be expecting when they graduate, and it's important. And today, to meet the iconic duck cutting himself, I mean, that's amazing. A wonderful opportunity for the kids.
All right. And now, Sunway University Group, I'm pretty sure has also been keeping itself up to date with the latest technology in terms of...
We definitely try, yeah.
All right. So how does the Sunway Group, education group, use technology like big data when it comes to managing the students and programs?
Well, we collect so much data all the time, and manually it has become impossible to sift through and sometimes to make sense of a lot of the collected data. And like they say, if data keeps coming in, and if you can't make sense of it, it really becomes rubbish. But we do know that there is a lot of gold in rubbish itself, and hence we really have to see how to make sense of it. One of the ways is to have big data help us analyze the trends. And once we know the trends, it's easier to, I wouldn't say predict, but help us to stay ahead and keep up with the times, so as to say. So, yeah.
Okay, speaking of keeping up with the times, with technology allowing a lot of things nowadays, do you think, even in the Sunway Education Group, when it comes to studies in the future, will we have students who are able to learn just everything online instead of like coming to classes? I mean,
we like to think, all right, and I still believe that the face-to-face interaction is very important, and as such, I don't think lecturers, the lecture hall, and the professors will be out of date for a while. I will be defunct, so as to say. But there are a lot of online tools that are helping students to understand more and learn better. That I don't dispute. And I really think that the blended model of having both online and also offline and face-to-face is important. I think what I truly value for my students is the fact that nowadays they can actually go back and look into something that they had missed. And the other thing is, like you have video on demand, that when they have a little bit more time, they can go back and revise, looking at online videos, for example. So that is very important.
all right. So that's all I have to ask you for today.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us, Dr. Elizabeth. And we'll be right back with more interviews after this.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we are live back in Sunway University with Vice Chancellor, Professor Graham Wilkinson. If I did pronounce it correctly? Graham Wilkinson, sir. All right. So how do you feel, sir, today with Mr. Duck Cutting in campus here with all of us and talking to the students?
I think it's fantastic because Doug is such an icon in the field of big data. And he's a really inspirational character, and I think for our students it's important for them to be exposed to leaders in their fields, to learn from them. And also I think many students, when they're sort of still studying, they don't appreciate perhaps how far they can go, what they can achieve. And by exposing them to sort of the real leaders in their field, the icons, they get to understand what potential there is, what potential they have themselves. And I always encourage students to think big, to think about their future achievements and to see what they could contribute to the world. And it's always great to have inspirational talkers, people come from any field indeed, and to share their knowledge, their journey in life, how they've got to where they are. It's so inspiring for students, and that's absolutely essential. And I really want our students to make the best of themselves, learn from great people, and that's really what's so special. That's why it's great to have Doug Cutting here today, who really is, I think, the world leader in big data and the technology behind it. All
right. Speaking of big data and the technology behind it, when we talk about big data and education, how do they complement each other?
Well, I think, first of all, we're now in the big data revolution, really. Big data has such huge potential, and we've hardly scratched the surface of that yet. Big data offers huge amount of information that businesses can use and analyze to improve what they're doing, target new markets, they can learn about consumer behavior. Big data has huge potential, and it's not just, for example, in business, but also just in other things that help humanity. For example, in healthcare, we can analyze huge quantities of healthcare data to have perhaps develop targeted therapies, new medicines based on precision medicine. We analyze the data of huge quantities of people. So big data is really, it's here to stay. It's a big thing. It's going to be a great benefit to business and commerce in the future, as well as to us in terms of health and just our well-being. So it's important, and that's why we need to educate people about big data, potential of it. We need to be giving training the next generation of professionals to operate in this field. And we need to give them the skills and knowledge to play a big role in this and to actually help to create the software and the systems to both analyze the data, do the data mining, and to make something from it. So it's a big area, and we as a university want to train people to be able to contribute in that field. And that's so education is a key part of that, giving people the knowledge and the skills to really help in this important field.
Having said that, do you see education itself becoming more data-driven?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think this is a really interesting question because I can see the day, it hasn't happened yet, when we could actually use big data to create educational curricula. For example, we could even potentially look at, we could analyze all of the job adverts in the world,
That's true.
and the specifications of those jobs and what skills and knowledge employers, industry are looking for. Then, by analysing that, we could then go back and create new curricula to match those industry requirements. I mean, we could actually design curriculum based on big data, analysing what the world needs in terms of training of new professionals. So, I think no one's yet done this, but I could just see one day we could even be developing academic programs, courses, degrees in universities based on what big data is telling us. We could, invent new degrees, new courses based on that, and even update them and create new ones almost all the time as we gather new information about what's required. So I think there's a tremendous opportunity. It's very exciting, and I think no one's really done this, but I can just see that one day we could really just be teaching and designing curricula that based on what big data is telling us about the world out there, about new knowledge, about requirements industry, just through scanning job adverts, scanning new kinds of knowledge information, and using that to create new educational models, new educational programs. Very exciting opportunity. I don't think anyone's done this yet, but I just got a feeling that day is going to come. So yeah, it's quite exciting, really.
Would you think Sunway University would pioneer something like that?
Well, potentially we could. I mean, because we have programs in business analytics. We're training people in this field. We have staff who understand this technology and are making use of it. So I think we partner with maybe some industry players in this field. We could actually probably do this. I think we're well placed to do it, really. And I'm very keen that we have curricula which are really up to date and at the leading edge. And what better way to be at leading edge than using big data to tell you what leading edge actually is, in case we don't know it. So, I think we could be doing that. I'd be very excited about that, I have to say.
All right. Okay. Thank you very much for your time, sir.
Nice to talk to you.
All right.
Thank you.
And we'll be right back with one more interview after this. All right, welcome back, and we are with Dato' Yasmin from MDAC, who's here in Sunway University as well for Mr. Duck Cutting Stock. Firstly, going straight into the questions, I just want to ask you, how does MDAC work with universities and colleges to help students with their digital journey?
Okay, so we have two main tracks. The first one is about ensuring that we have we help universities develop industry-ready and top-notch talent around software programmers, coders, and IT, related professionals. So for this purpose, we have recently, about a year ago, we've launched this program called Premier Digital Tech Universities, which Sunway is one of them. The whole idea is to ensure that there is that the people out there know that there is a group of universities which have got a pedagogy and a strategy and an approach that is completely aligned with the industry requirements, so that when students from these Premier Digital Tech Universities graduate, they will be ready for the industry. So the hope for this is that we're going to attract all the best students, the top students right now, because there is a huge opportunity in digital technology.
That's right.
You know, we are forecasting there's 1 million jobs by the year 2025. And they are high-paying jobs. So we want all the best students out there to actually choose this profession or this course to serve the needs of the industry. So that is one key focus. The other one is around ensuring that data analytics. We know that the world is going to be a data-driven, and data is the foundation to AI. And AI, people talk about AI economy, the algorithm economy. So we have to make sure that no matter what discipline our students are in, whether they are a doctor, whether they are in business, whether they are in accounting, that they understand the whole approach towards data analytics. And that is what we're doing currently, is the focus around ensuring that data science, data analytics modules are well developed, done in conjunction with the industry. And at the same time, to embed data analytics and data modules to be to be embedded into even other disciplines in business analytics and so on. So these are the two tracks that we're working with our universities.
Just to follow up on that, at the moment, do you have students already doing this? And I mean, what's the status of this right now? I mean,
for which one? About the Premier Digital Tech
Yes, that's right,
Universities?
yes.
For both, for both of them, we've been doing this for the last couple of years actually. So the Premier Digital Tech Universities, there are currently 8 of them that has been certified, and it's a really, and I'm very happy about this program, because what we have seen is that the industry is now concentrating their effort within these 8 universities. Of course, they can work with the rest.
That's
I'm
right.
saying, but at least with the 8, then we know that we have created a panel of experts. So every curriculum that this university develops will have to be jointly developed by this industry panel of experts, and at the same time we're also pushing in projects, so case studies and project work are highly relevant and highly up to date, as well as there's some co-teaching as well, and internship and as well. So we have so I think this is moving. In fact, we are coming to the second batch already. We are reviewing it every couple of years to ensure that the standards are still being upheld. Yeah? And we're also seeing that in these Premier Digital Tech Universities, there is an overwhelming response to students coming into choosing these IT-related courses, which has not been the case before. Before, our students were not interested to take computer science and IT-related courses. But I think with the kind of outreach that we have done and the realization that digital is the way forward, these universities are seeing at least a double, and even some are seeing a quadruple increase in the student intake. Yeah, so that has been that has already put in motion. The data analytics one, yes, it's put in motion. In fact, what we are doing, this Cloudera's CAP program, is something that we did. I think it was in the year end of 2016 that we started. And Cloudera and Hadoop is really a very important stakeholder in the whole data analytics and data science world. So we were one of the first countries actually to implement this program here. So at the very basic layer, we have train lecturers, so do a transfer of technology to the lecturers of 10 universities right now. But that's the baseline. What Sunway is doing, I think, is really the ideal model, which is they have taken this baseline module and they have created their own module on top of it. So it's called the business analytics module. And you know, and they are embedding it into all of their business school students, which I think is really where we want to take all the rest of the 10 universities in this program too.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. And I think that's about it. Stay tuned because we have duck cutting stock coming up live next. All right.
This is camera. Oh yeah,
To your right for your toilet break conveniences, and thank you for your cooperation. So, to start off the session, I would like to invite our Sunway University Vice Chancellor, Professor Graham Wilkinson, for a welcome speech. Round of applause, please.
Well, a very good afternoon, everyone, and especially to our distinguished guests, of course, Doug Cutting, the Chief Architect of Cloudera, and our distinguished guest lecturer today, welcome. Also, welcome to Alan Chu, Country Manager, Malaysia of Cloudera, Dato Yasmin Mahmood, the CEO of MDEC, Malaysian Digital Economy Corporation, welcome. Dr. Elizabeth Lee, the Senior Executive Director of Sunway Education Group, other colleagues and friends from Cloudera, industry representatives, colleagues from Sunway University and other educational institutions present here today, members of the media, members of Sunway Analytics Society, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to all of you to this very special lecture today, and we are indeed very fortunate to have a very special lecture from Doug Cutting, who is truly, I think, we could say, an icon in the field of big data. Doug is, you may know, is a graduate of Stanford University and is the former chairman of the Apache Software Foundation, and he is, of course, a champion of open source software. Doug is widely... certainly and one of the pioneers of big data analysis. Of course, here in Sunway University, we want to expose our students to great thinkers and pioneers in all fields, and it's a delight to be able to do that today in this field of computer science and big data in particular. And of course, hadoop is an important technology. It enables networks of computers to solve big problems involving massive amounts of data and computation. And of course, we now live in a world in which big data and the processing of hugely complex and massive data sets can yield enormous benefits for business and society in all kinds of ways. And this can involve, of course, using business data as well as data gathered from social media and other sources. So it's really, the data is growing exponentially and there's huge potential from it. And I'm quite sure we're really only at the beginning of the big data era and have yet to realise the full potential of what can be done. And I think it's truly amazing, the potential, and we see more. Is a key part of what is now being called the fourth industrial revolution. I'm therefore delighted to welcome Doug Cutting both to Malaysia, to Sunway City and to Sunway University, and of course to thank him for giving up his valuable time to be here and to travel so far, and to give his personal expert thoughts and reflection on this exciting area of big data. Now, we in Sunway University are very much engaged in the big data revolution and have our own degree program, a bachelor's degree in Information Systems Business Analytics. It's a very important program for our university. We pride ourselves on having up-to-date degrees at the cutting edge of technology and that are of course industry relevant. And this degree is aimed at training the human capital needed to support the rapid rise in big data and extracting business value from it. Our program gives students the key skills and knowledge in areas such as data mining, business intelligence, data analytics in the cloud, and social media analytics. I would like to thank the organisers for today's event and Dr. Angela Lee in particular, who is the programme lead. I believe we are the first private university to graduate students who follow Cloudera's industry standard Hadoop curriculum. We are indeed delighted to have been able to participate in this partnership and to work closely with Cloudera for the benefit of our students and graduates, who we hope will become key players in the big data industry here in Malaysia in the future. So finally, let me say once again a very special thank you to our speaker, and I look forward very much to hearing from him shortly. And of course, let me thank all of you for coming to join us here at Sunway University for this very special lecture today. Thank you.
So today with us here today, we have the privilege of having Datuk Yasmin Mahmood, CEO of MDEC Malaysia Digital Economy Corporation with us here today. Round of applause.
Enabler to drive innovation in businesses across industries in Malaysia. And MDEC, as the custodian of the Malaysian digital economy, has been appointed as the lead agency to drive this initiative across the board. The goal of the National BDA Initiative is to position Malaysia as the leading BDA hub in the region, in the Southeast Asia region. As envisioned in the National Big Data Analytics Framework, or the BDA framework, a thriving BDA ecosystem will require 5 key enablers. The first one is about awareness on the importance of this data-driven economy. Secondly is around people and the talent. Thirdly is the data governance and the policy. Fourth is a technology platform, and the last one is industry-driven open innovation.
As CAP, will be able to help us to reduce the talent gap, and at the same time to help us to spread the awareness of the need for more data professionals, including data scientists.
Big data will play a pivotal role in the growth of our economy, and we have to be ready for it. It is not a choice. It is something that we have to do to future-proof our companies, our businesses, as well as our nation. At MDEC, our goal is to drive and catalyze an ecosystem to promote and accelerate both the supply and demand of the equation. That is, the companies that are developing cutting-edge global products and solutions, as well as encouraging our companies to adopt these solutions.
With Cloudera's help, we are confident that Malaysia will go further in realizing our national agenda of having a robust digital economy and help positioning Malaysia as a big data hub in Southeast Asia.
Cloudera's global leadership in the area of BDA is undisputed, and we are extremely proud to be partnering with them to further strengthen the BDA ecosystem in Malaysia.
In the century of Asia Pacific, many nations have adopted leading technologies to be the nation to be admired. Malaysia with its digital economy, Singapore with its smart nation, India's digital India, Japan's smart society are a few examples of that. To advance a technology in the marketplace, one has to look at imperatives in the field of technology and delivery, and also the skill. For big analytic skills enablement is partnering many countries, many communities, many tertiary education institutions here in Asia Pacific to deliver the skills imperative to fulfill University, MDEC or Malaysia Digital Economy Corporation, our partners in training, our partners in solutions, executive search firms, as well as communities come together, connecting the dots to make sure that this whole ecosystem is alive and delivering the value that the combined parts should deliver.
The Big Data Initiative the development about data professionals in Malaysia itself. So we and Sunway University, we are able to enable our students all-rounder with the analytic skill sets, not just knowing from the proprietary tools, but then on the hadoop, on the machine learning, MapReduce, and also Python skill sets, and also a little bit on R skill sets to them. Now, our students need to know all these tools in order for them to be equipped, all right, with the knowledge of the whole full-fledged of analytics, tools, and developments. So our students are able to not just prepping the data, they are able to develop a model, and then they are able to do predictions, and most importantly, they are able to tell story from the analysis that they have created out. Cloudera Initiative programs gave us the flexibility. Their syllabus is so easy. Existing syllabus. So we are able to adopt
Thank you very much. I'm flattered by all the attention. I didn't have time to prepare a video, so I'll actually have to speak in person. I guess, do I have a slide presentation that no, I'm just going to talk. Okay, great. It's easier. So the thing that I hope to impart on you today, that you'll take away from this, is excitement about what you can do and what you can achieve and the difference you can make. I'll tell my story, but I started because in IT because I needed to pay off loans for my education. I was motivated by a need for active tech industry, that was a good thing to go into. But in the end, I've been able to do much more than that. And what I found to be rewarding was the result of taking risks. And I encourage you all, I think we're at such an early stage, as the Vice Chancellor said, of these technologies, of the adoption of this, that we can all have incredible impact. Not just on the companies that we work for, on entire industries, on your country, on the world. If we act boldly and think big and take risks. So I hope you come away with excitement, especially going into this area, which holds so much promise, and we're still in such an early stage of. So let me, with that, I'll tell my story a bit and then talk a bit about where we see this big data ecosystem going in the coming years. As I mentioned, I ended up in IT, worked for a decade or more writing proprietary software primarily, ended up being a specialist in search engines before there were web search engines. It was entirely luck. It was good fortune that had me build up an expertise in an area that then boomed with the advent of the web. So I worked on web search engines. I worked for a company which ended up banging, I guess, going bankrupt, Excite in the 90s. And I had, in my spare time, while they're worried that the internet bubble of that era, of the late 1990s, might pop, I'd written some search technology on my own time that I owned, and thought that I might build into a business. And when it came time to actually think about doing that, I realized I didn't have the stomach for that. That I wasn't interested in hiring people and developing license agreements and thinking about pricing. All those things were not stuff that I found enjoyable. I enjoyed building technology. I enjoyed collaborating with people on technology. So I at that point decided to experiment with open source. So this was software known as Lucene, named after my wife's middle name. So I gave it away for free to see what would happen. Quickly, people started to use it. They found that a few people found that it actually solved their problems right away. That they could build search into their product fairly easily, and at a very low cost of zero. And so it started to get some users, and some people would find that it almost worked, and they would ask me to make a small change, or they would themselves make a change, and gradually Lucene started to improve. And this process has continued, and it's gotten more and more useful. It's been largely rewritten in the 18 years since then, and it is now probably the most used search technology that exists. And I think, had I tried to commercialize it, had I tried to build a company around it and sell it, no one would have ever heard of it. The company would have likely failed. There were other companies selling search software in those days. So it wasn't the technical excellence of Lucene that has powered it to its current position. So what was it? And I really give the bulk of the credit to this open source process. It was really an accelerant for the adoption of Lucene. People felt free to try it. They could, when they encountered troubles, they could directly understand and debug them because they had the code right there. In many cases, not requiring assistance. Source code itself helps people adopt the code. When they needed assistance, there was a growing community of folks to help them, and moreover, it didn't entangle them in a commercial relationship that would be hard to get out of in the way that a commercial software licensing agreement can entangle your business and make it dependent on another business that might change the terms of that over time. And it's just a risk. We all try to avoid dependencies in software design, and I think in businesses as well. You want to avoid unneeded dependencies. And so Lucene really took off. And moreover, I really enjoyed working on open source. I could be completely honest with my collaborators. Someone would say, this is terrible software, it doesn't do that. And I'm like, you're right, it doesn't do that. I didn't have to try to convince them. If they wanted to think it was terrible software, that was fine, because they weren't paying me anything. And if they thought it was wonderful, that was even better. And so it was this wonderful environment of honesty, and we could talk about the actual problems that we had in the software and how to improve it, and together make it become the software that people actually needed. That this open source not only eases adoption, but it encourages the software to grow in a way that people actually want to use it, not necessarily in a way that makes it easier to sell. So it's just a different incentive system for development of features. And so I decided at that point in the early 2000s that I wanted to keep working on open source. I then started building a web search engine. I'd done that at Excite in the 90s. So a full crawler-based system like Google or Bing have today, but as open source. And it was an ambitious project. It's not an obvious open source solution, but I thought it would be an interesting project. I was able to find some folks to help fund it part-time. We worked on it for a couple of years. We got something which sort of ran. The web, even in 2003, was big enough that you couldn't store all of it on one PC. You needed to have a set of PCs to store it across, and you needed to be running your crawling and your analysis and your search processes in parallel. So we needed some kind of parallel distributed system, and so we built something, but it was pretty clunky, pretty hard to operate. I could run it on 5 machines, and that was basically a full-time job to keep it running on those 5 machines. Monitoring and when things would complete phases, then I would manually start the next phase of a process and so on. And around that time, Google published 2 papers about the way they were doing things. And I'd heard rumors from friends who worked at Google that they had these incredible capabilities. That at Google you could write a very short program and then run it on 1,000 computers in parallel, and within a matter of minutes get back results that had processed petabytes of data. And this was pretty much impossible in any other way. And as someone who had worked on search engines for years, and before that on natural language processing, on speech recognition, and these kinds of tasks, this was a dream. This is what we needed to make advances in all of these fields. And Google then published these papers describing how they were doing this. They talked about this technique called MapReduce for parallelizing computation, and a system called the Google File System, GFS, for storing data across large numbers of computers. And both of them with this property, the key property, that they were automating the reliability. So that if any machine were to fail, your computation could continue. I could run it on 4 or 5 times as many computers as before, with a lot less babysitting and maintenance. But I was learning that distributed systems, even ones that are fairly straightforward ones, like Google had devised, are still much harder to debug. It's a good reason why you only want to build one distributed framework and then have everyone share it, because there's a lot of little subtle problems that can come up when you're dependent on 100 other machines. And many of these problems only come out as you increase the number of machines and as you increase the amount of computation you do. There's a lot of rare situations that you encounter and that you have to fix, one by one. And I began to realize that the two of us working part-time on this might take another 5 years to get to the point where we really have something that delivered on this promise of giving people scalable computation on inexpensive hardware as open source. That we didn't have the resources that Google had to help this, and we needed some help. So I was supporting myself and my family at that point. What they needed was this generic distributed platform. We needed to name the project. I had a son who some years earlier had been given a stuffed yellow elephant, which he'd come up here. We really crossed that threshold of reliability where we could have a system which would run for weeks or months at a time, reliably on hundreds and thousands of machines, and people started to adopt it. So this is now about 2007. We started to see no longer just a few hobbyists interested in hadoop, but folks at Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter and so on, really incorporating it into their businesses. And so I thought, okay, we're done here. that's mission accomplished. And I was ready to move on. When people started to approach me, venture capitalists and other technologists, saying, you know, this could go much further. This could be much bigger than just a tool used by search engines and a few web companies. This could be used by lots of enterprises, by telephone companies, by banks, by insurance companies, by governments. Everybody is going to be swimming in data soon, and the existing enterprise software tools they have really aren't very effective at handling a lot of the tasks that they're going to want to be able to a lot of the things they're going to want to be able to try on their data. And I was skeptical. I don't, you know, a lot of people have a lot of crazy ideas for startups, and most of them don't fare very well. I said, why don't you, go ahead and do that, but I'm not going to join you. And a year later, I thought about it. They started this company, Cloudera, in 2008. It was the first company to really have this idea of spreading this big data technology beyond a few Silicon Valley companies. And in 2009, I still wasn't convinced, but I could see that if they were right, it would be a really fun thing to be a part of. So I joined Cloudera, 2009, and we've really seen that become true. That we now have industries, almost every industry is now, at least in some small part, adopting these technologies. And I've come to see the wisdom that we really are beginning to have all of our industries primarily growing and improving through the use of data. It is the fuel that is now driving things, and the style of operation that Hadoop introduced has really germinated a tradition and a new way of doing things that is much better, I think, and much more appropriate for this deluge of data that we now have than previous methods. You can, we've now seen a number of other projects grow up alongside Hadoop. Many are superior to Hadoop in many ways. We've got Spark, easier to use, more powerful than MapReduce. We've got a Kudu, another storage system, which has a lot of advantages over HDFS. We've got Kafka for streaming. All these things are coming from different organizations. We've got this vibrant ecosystem, quickly developing technologies. Those that are successful at solving more than one institution's problems become popular and grow stronger in the way that open source does, and moreover become stronger in ways that are directly useful to the folks who are building it. Again, it's this the incentives for open source development are much more closely aligned with those of the users, and so we've seen this phenomenal growth in capability in the last 10 years, in the number of different kinds of processing that you can bring to your data is much greater. You can do search, you can do machine learning, you do real-time streaming processing, all these things at scale and at very low cost. So it's a phenomenal tool set that it can continuing to grow, and I think this style of growth with this loosely coupled set of open source projects is a strong one. That it's this evolutionary thing will continue for decades, I think, to provide us with new technologies that are appropriate to the challenges that we're facing. So I think it's very exciting. I'm incredibly proud to have been a part of the beginning of this, but I think it is only the beginning. We've now, as I said, seen this adopted and beginning to drive this digital transformation of industries, and it's not an easy thing for folks to adopt these technologies. The technologies themselves are, if you've been studying them, a little tricky. It's seamless. Data is always incredibly messy. The skills required, take time to learn. And they keep changing. We're now in a mode, I think, where we're going to continue to have to educate ourselves through our careers. That the tools will change every decade and much more rapidly than they were for the decades before. But the payoff, I think, is tremendous, and the ability to change it. So I want to talk about a few of the other more subtle obstacles that folks encounter in their data journey. One that we see more often than anything, and it's surprising, maybe not, is just that it's difficult to change organizations. People, we've had a fairly stable suite of technology for maybe 30 years in relational databases as a foundation. And organizations have been built to embrace that particular technology stack and a particular style of operation of it. And big data is a different style. I already mentioned some aspects of it, of having a choice of different engines, having more of your data online, also having more of it online in a raw form, so that you can reprocess it. You needn't normalize it. You needn't do incredible amounts of upfront work. Instead, rather, what people tend to be more productive with is exploring and experimenting and evolving their applications themselves, so that you try 10 things and one of them looks moderately successful, and you deploy it and then you continue to improve it, rather than spending 5 years designing a system and then 5 years building it, and then you end up with something which is very inflexible and isolated, which is what we tended to do before. To rather have a lot more agility and flexibility in how we build things. But that's a challenge because it's a different kind of an organization that supports that. We want to no longer keep all of the wisdom about data systems encapsulated in an IT organization, but rather spread this throughout the whole organization. Folks in manufacturing, in the factories, people in marketing, people in all kinds of all parts of the organization should have direct access to technology tools, because that's where the wisdom is about the problems that they're facing in their parts of the business, and the organization is going to be more effective the more you can remove intermediaries between you, but between the people who have that wisdom and the data. And so these technologies are more and more facilitating that, the sort of self-service models of data. But again, that's a huge change for organizations. And that, again, that is the largest obstacle we see is this cultural change of permitting people to build these kinds of systems, enabling them, and organizing the things around them. So the way that we've seen people succeed at this is interesting. So people tend to, they'll hear a talk like mine, or they'll read an article in a magazine or in the news, and they get very excited, and they think we need to adopt big data technologies in our organization. We need to throw away everything we're doing and start over. And it's a bad way to go. You're going to just run into a lot of obstacles, and reasonably. You've got systems that are working. You can't throw them away. So rather, what we suggest and have seen to be effective is you need to have that vision. That's important. The inspiration to see this is where we'd like to go. We'd like to become an organization with self-service data systems. We'd like to become an organization that's using machine learning to inform its decisions. But we also realize we can't get there overnight. We need to move there incrementally. There's what you want to do is start with some small projects in an organization, propose small projects that are fairly simple, that are maybe, a great case is if you can save some costs right away. So one of the most common first use cases we see is not that exciting. It's replacing existing functionality with a less expensive version that scales more easily. So classically, this is data warehousing. We've got a great set of data warehousing tools in the big data stack, and you can. Data warehouses are very expensive. They're very useful. A lot of times people are squeezed. They feel like they want to put more in their data warehouse, but they can't afford to as a business. It's that expensive. And so instead, they can start to transition and move more of their data warehousing into the big data stack, and immediately both see cost savings. They'll reduce their spend on data warehousing, but also be able to put more data in their data warehouse. And then they also build an understanding of how to process, how to manage this kind of a system in their institution. And they'll also get interest from people who want to explore the data and be more, try this more agile, incremental approach, and who will say, hey, you've loaded that data into the system that has these other capabilities, can I run this experiment? And so you also need to have the culture of saying yes to running experiments, which hasn't, classically in IT, systems aren't designed to support that. They're designed to solve a specific problem and not to be open for other parts of the organization to come and play around on. And so that's a change you need to have from the outset. And we've seen in many cases, in almost every case, folks will find someone will come who you didn't even know knew anything about data with ideas of ways to improve the organization, ways to improve parts of your products, but they've never had the data, they've never been able to try this idea. At Yahoo, when we were building Hadoop originally, our goal was to, as I said, build a web search engine, but it took a while. The web search engine is a big beast, a lot of data, a lot of people involved in it, and that took years to get the web search engine of Yahoo moved onto Hadoop. But in the meantime, 8, 10 more, many organizations came and said, hey, you've got this technology, you've got some data stored in it already that I want, you've got page view data, you've got the web pages themselves, you've got maybe details about our advertisers, you've got logs of all the queries that people have done. I want to do some experiments with improving page layout to get, understand where people are clicking and where they're not clicking on a page. I want to do, and it's impossible to do those kinds of things easily before. And the system they were building, the web search, already had all the data that was needed to answer those. Or I think we could do a better job of proposing spelling corrections to queries. If we just had a flexible system we could do some experiments on and had access to all the log of queries that people have done. And again, that system was deployed years before, or at least over a year, before the primary purpose that the system was being built for was put in production. So encouraging these experiments is really the way that you will grow this capability within an organization. So again, you want to have your eye on the long term of where you want to head, but you don't necessarily want to try to start with one of those kinds of projects. Those are speculative, and you don't want to make the success of your big data effort dependent on the success of an experiment, because experiments fail often, and you need to be willing to try them again and again. Some of them will succeed, and so you need to have a platform that supports that. Again, I think we're at a tremendously exciting time. We have this suite of tools which is improving. You are the people who are going to drive this forward, who are going to identify, who are going to invent these next generation applications that are going to improve industries, that are going to reinvent industries and business models. There's so much potential, as well as potentially build the next generation of tools that really drive this forward. And I hope you're excited to begin this journey of taking advantage of this revolution and furthering it to help not just your own career, not just the organizations you work for, but I think you can really bring up all of society through these things. There's the potential is so great right now. I'm excited about the opportunities in education, in improving fairness, in governance, in healthcare. We're now seeing that our bodies have an underlying digital mechanism. We've known this for a while in genetics, but we're now able to sequence not only the genomes of people, but there's a project, the Human Cellular Atlas, to sequence every cell, the RNA of every cell in a body. Phenomenal amount of data, and will let us approach diseases in ways that we haven't even been able to dream about before. And we're going to continue to be making fundamental advances in all of these areas for decades. The opportunities are just tremendous out there, and I'm excited for you to be able to be a part of that. I think your entire career, I think we're gonna continue to be making big advances and big leaps. If the hardware and software platforms were to stand still today, I think our existing society is underutilizing them dramatically. Every organization is doing things in very suboptimal ways, and there's just the hardware and software platforms are not standing still. They're continuing to improve rapidly, and so I think that as I've said several times already, the potential is incredible, and I hope I've helped to impart some of my excitement on you today. So I think that's where I'll pause. I don't know how long I was supposed to talk or how long I have talked. But do we have an opportunity for questions?
Yes, we do. So, right. Anyone who would like to ask any questions should please raise up their hands, and the microphone will be passed to you. Right, we have one person over there.
Good afternoon. So, as compared to service-oriented architecture and monolithic architecture, which is being used in nowadays society, so what's your view on microservices in terms of the evolution of big data, since it is quite a new concept to the industry?
I think microservices hold a lot of promise. I'm seeing people, gain a lot of flexibility, and although on the other hand, I think it can be taken to an extreme. I think it's some moderation. I've seen people try to push things too far, and you end up with a very fragile system. I think there's a lot of judgment required to decide what are the pieces which you really want to separate into logical services that you can monitor and maintain and replace separately, and what is really too fine-grained and actually just increases the amount of both maintenance and monitoring that you need to do, and makes that unwieldy. So as with a lot of things, it's a matter of taste. And I'm also going to say I'm not the one who should answer that. You are the one who should go and try and experiment and determine what's the next best technology. I don't think of my role now or ever, for that matter, is to predict what new technologies and tell people. We should all be experimenting and finding out what are the best techniques for our use cases.
Hi, very good afternoon. Myself, Bhupendra Vishwa. I'm working around the big data technology last 5 years. So I just have one question. How do you see Cloudera and Hortonworks merger? Where we are with the big data when Cloudera and Hortonworks announced the merger?
I'm probably not supposed to say much about it. For those who don't know, Cloudera and Hortonworks are merging. The process is proceeding well. We've gotten the government approval. The shareholder vote is coming up late this month, and I think people expect the merge to be consummated in early January if things continue on the schedule they're on. We intend to offer a merged offering in fairly short order that is a superset of both product lines, and then over time try to initially there'll be obviously some duplication, because there is some duplication in our products. I think 75 or 80% of the software is identical. Some of it is complementary, but some of it is just duplicative, and so we'll need to over time reduce that. So that'll happen. Mostly, I'm excited, but I think it's a good thing. I think it removes I think most of the competition, most of the interaction was not productive for us or for customers or for users. It was competing for competition's sake rather than necessarily improving the platform. So I think it's going to remove some distractions and let us all focus on real problems.
Yeah. So now is it going to be more open source? Because Hortonworks is more talking about 100% open source. What about the cloud?
So there's a team. The way this works legally, we've got 2 publicly traded companies. There's a team that has worked, locked away in the chamber of people from both companies that is making a plan for how the merged company will work in answering those sorts of questions. But they're not allowed to communicate with anyone else. And I'm not on that team.
Thank you.
We'll see. I mean, Cloudera has always, we've had a line for what is open source and what is not within Cloudera, and it's a different line than Hortonworks has said. Everything that they deliver is going to be open source. Cloudera has said that everything that stores and processes data will be open source, but the software used to operate, to install, monitor, configure your cluster that the IT administrators run is proprietary. Whether that line moves after the merger or not is what we all get to learn in early January.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have a question here. On your right.
Yes, there we are.
Well, we know that there are EIKW model, data, information, knowledge, and wisdom. I want to ask you, what is the role of wisdom in the big data? And what do you think about when T.S. Eliot said we have lost information in data? I mean, we have, where is the data? Where is the wisdom we lost in knowledge? Where is knowledge we have lost in information? I'm worried about where is even information we lost in big data. Thank you.
Yeah, to the degree I understand the question. I'm a pragmatic person, and I think there's one is tempted to try to build the ideal ultimate system that has the perfect schema for your business, and that you can run forever, and to spend a lot of time on that. And I think in practice that you never achieve that, because the world changes, the business changes. On one hand, on the other hand, things that even something that you imagine you don't ever actually build perfectly. Any system that has been around very long has a lot of imperfections. On the other hand, we clearly don't want to have mayhem. People talk about the data swamp, and so the data lake, and having no schemas for anything, and everybody just wild west of data is clearly also a bad outcome. So we need to find some middle ground, some way to manage our data so that we understand what it is, so that we keep it as well structured and labeled as we can, so that we minimize duplication of data, duplication of processing, and get results that we can interpret, that we can maintain. So there's a lot of pragmatic concerns that I think that's what we need to try to optimize for those outcomes, rather than try to spend a lot of time trying to build a perfect system, and accept that there's always going to be, it'll always be messy, and what we can just try to do is say, how can I reduce the mess, improve the productivity, and with the least effort, and move forward, and keep making progress. So it's I don't think there's does that address what you were asking? Okay.
All right, so we'll take one more question.
Hello. Yeah, I'm Rehan.
Hi.
So regarding the data security, so like if I want to store any sensitive information in Hadoop, okay, so like there is the encryption available. So is there like a custom encryption that I can apply on the moving data?
Yeah, so I mean, initially when we first built Hadoop, there was no security at all. Anyone could read and write anything. But now we've added pretty good role-based access to and authorizations to most of the tools. Data is encrypted at rest in HDFS. It's also encrypted on the wire by just about I think every tool that Cloudera supports in the stack. I think now has encryption and authorization. There's room for improvement. Some intelligence communities have a way that they like to operate, where they tag data when it's generated with aspects of how the source it comes from, and then you also, each user has attributes indicating what sorts of data they're allowed to see, and they only then see things, so that every single cell of data, every item has all these attributes that are combined with the attributes of the user, and it's a very powerful mechanism, but it's also very expensive, and we haven't seen, so there's room. We could build much finer grained security systems. I'm sure there are bugs in the existing security, but I think we've come a long ways. It is possible to lock things down fairly well. We've got a number of regulated industries who use who are Cloudera customers in the credit card industry and the healthcare industries, where there's very strict concerns about who can see what data, how much you can audit and see who's seen what, how it's encrypted, and so we can conform to those regulations today.
Yeah, one more question. Thanks for that. So, like in open source projects, like I'll take example of Chromium. Okay, so Google Chrome browser, it is not open source, but it is built on the top of Chromium. So my question is, like nowadays we are having the concern of data privacy. So like why can't we have a tool which is able to pull out the code, and we can build it on a system, and we can use that instead of just getting the binary and just installing that software. So is such thing available, because which all the build processes, which all the build steps automated.
So you're hypothesizing that if all the software that stored data was public, then we could trust that our privacy would be better respected?
Is that,
All right, thank you.
it might help.
Sorry.
Oh, you want to stop?
Because I was informed that you'd have to leave very soon.
Oh,
So,
okay.
yeah.
I'll just say, I think it's more complicated. I think it's more complicated than that. I think there are ways that we can build systems technically that guarantee people's privacy, but it's not entirely technical. It's not even largely a technical issue. I think it has building trust is something that I care a lot about in data systems. But I think there's a lot of social aspects to how you manage things, how you monitor, how you validate, and a lot of processes and regulations that need to be that are part of that beyond technology.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Dakkaring, for such an session. I'd like to please remain on stage as the Senior Executive Director of the Sunway Education Group will present a token of appreciation to you.
This is on behalf of everyone here. Amazing talk.
Can I please have the Vice Chancellor, Professor Graham, to proceed to stage, as well as Mr. Nurhizam, the VP, Growth Ecosystem Development, MDEC, Mr. Daniel Ng, Senior Director of Marketing, Cloudera, Mr. Alan Chu, Cloudera Country Manager, Melina Huang, Asia Online General Manager, and Professor Serge, Dean of School of Computing and Information Technology. Please proceed to the stage.
Come on.
Can I please have Dr. Angela and Dr. Lau on stage, please? Thank you very much.
I've just stolen the mic. On behalf of Cloudera and our partners MDEC, we'd like to thank Sunway University for this opportunity of hosting duck cutting. Doug makes his way to APAC every so often, and hopefully you'll see him again soon. Parting words, in Cloudera we believe that data will make everything that's impossible today possible tomorrow. And we hope that's also true for your career. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Can I please ask of the VIP one more thing? Please proceed to your seat so that we can have a group picture with the audience before you leave. Can we please fill up the spaces? Sit. Can everyone please move to the center? A quick group photo, please.
That was competing with armor myself.
Can we please stand up? Sorry. Let's all stand up. All the people from the sides, please move to the center. All right. Can we please squeeze in? the people to the right, if you could just distribute yourselves more evenly.
To the right?
Yeah. Right. To the left. My right. Is that okay?
Everyone.
Everyone.
Come, students, come.
Sunway
Andrew, the business analytics
Come on.
club, come. Selfie.
Okay, everyone ready? Okay, ready? 1, 2. One more time. 1, 2. Can we do a happy face? Wait, okay. Yeah, turn first. Social media. We know what films last film. By what? Okay, freestyle?
Freestyle, everyone. Freestyle.
Oh, like that? Freestyle is like that. I wanted to ask if Hadoop has a pen sign, you know.
Alright, so anyone that wants to do the elephant? Alright, so once again, I would like to thank the organizers of this event. Sunway University, Cloudera, MDEC, Tech Data, Disruptive Tech ASEAN, Sunway Analytics Society, Monash University, and Sunway College. Please put your hands together for them for organizing this event. And lastly, a round of applause for Mr. Doug Cutting for allocating his